Hello and welcome to another episode of 10,000 Hours and Counting for Season 2, my podcast to encourage you on your path as a human, having an experience, your soul and your humanity all mingled together in this beautiful and oftentimes messy journey we are on. Here to offer you just some support, hopefully, and empowerment. And I'm here today with my beautiful friend, Trin. Trin's actually in Australia, in Sydney. I'm in Melbourne. Hi, Trin.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
I'm really excited to have you. And I was thinking before I started, I'm always saying my beautiful friend, I think life is too short to have friends that are not beautiful. And I mean from their hearts. So that's always my intro. The people who come in here are special to me. And I think it's important that we recognize those people and try to spend time with them when we can. It's always, to me, it's quality, not quantity, if it, happens. And so just being here with Trin, I said to her, let's talk about the usual, Trin, because these are the kind of things we would just chat about. So we're going to open our hearts and chat a bit and see what comes through for everyone. The one thing I was thinking I wanted to ask you about, Trin, is your own inner voice. Like I like to think about how we each have to personalize our journey with spirit, like how we connect with spirit. And I know that you do some beautiful, if you want to call it channeling or writing beautiful poems, which remind me of the Japanese haiku. They're very simple and direct and deeply powerful. So, what would you like to say about your inner voice and how you hear it, and maybe your journey with connecting with that unique part of your essence?
I think it's always been a part of me, but it's only really, I guess, the last 5, 6 years where we can say that I've just, entered this spiritual path. Because my life has always been quite logical, right? It's like growing up culturally and then also just academically build. I'm a pharmacist by profession, so that means that it's very scientifically based. But the last few years has just been a little bit of a process, I guess, of evolution within myself. And as part of that process, I think I've just learned to really just tune into my own self, my essence, and just wondering exactly what it is that I'm here to do. I mean, yes, I've got a purpose and I've got an outward, I guess, profession and vocation, but that just that extra soul calling. And as part of that process, I just found myself through the tuning in, I would just, I guess, sit in silence and oftentimes a bit confused, really, and trying to work out and express what it is that within myself um, I wanted to just for myself really most of the time. And I always found that the best way was it just came out in poetry, I guess, rhyming verses, rhyming words. And, and most of the time I surprised myself as to what it was that came through, because certainly if I was thinking it through it logically, it wouldn't be what I would write. Like the words, yes, very, very simple words. I found that it wasn't very, I guess in poetry form flowery or very full of great image, I guess, or even metaphors, but the messages and the transmissions, you know, it just made sense. And it was always filled with love and
Mm.
hope and guidance, and that everything was okay. I think at the end of the day, it was everything's going to be okay. You are okay, and you have support. And and yeah, that's where I kind of found myself a lot of times. And there was a period that was quite intense in there that I would quite often, for a couple of years, leading, I think, right through COVID. I don't know why. It was just as we were heading, and it had nothing to do with COVID. It was just my own soul's evolution. But I think having that period actually allowed that extra tuning in, because we weren't allowed to do anything and go anywhere. So it was actually a great opportunity, I guess, for it to come and flow through. So yeah, that's where I've been sitting with that.
I like you talking about that, the like the lockdowns, as I sort of think of it for myself. And I think that was a really good opportunity. I know it was a good opportunity for Earth. It was all happening to everyone at once, and everyone was sort of having to go within, essentially, step back out of the regular world they were in. And it's been this opportunity. It's part of the reason why I want to do this podcast. You know, I've been living this life and doing this spiritual work for 2 decades and a bit of change. But everyone was given an opportunity to somehow step back from the busyness and be with themselves. And that's what you've just said. It's about, I sort of feel like our journey, ultimately, of course, we're connected to other people in different ways and we help them and we share. But ultimately, your life is about you and your soul and what the soul wants to express and how you are in your moments when it is just you. And you said a bit of confusion of having to find out, well, what is going on for me right now? What really personally for me that no one else out there can tell me and that no book will tell me either? How do I unlock the unique essence of me? And what you just said about the transmissions, I think that's something beautiful too. I've always found it interesting that different people, even creative people and people who wouldn't necessarily say they're on their spiritual path, but they are open-hearted, have an ability to sort of share a bit of their, I want to say, soul energy in a transmission of something that they just say off the cuff, or they're just their simple presence can be unlocking for other people. It can either be a word. When I read your poetry, I'm not big on huge flowery words either, and it just goes right into my heart. So when you receive some energy into your heart, it feels like a resonance that just works for you. I think that that's the purity of when someone's unique soul essence is transmitted into the world and someone else receives it.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's part of it too, that to actually park the ego aside and then also have, I guess, the courage, right? And possibly confidence, but I think it's more so courage to be able to share that and say, hey, okay, this is what's come through. Specifically initially for me, but potentially, yes, there's probably some resonance here for you as well. And I guess that's part of also my biggest learning thing is part of that trust, right? To go, okay, this is not just for yourself, but for someone else. Potentially, it is your truth, but it can help in terms of someone's own evolution, growth, transformation, healing, whatever words we want to put in relation to this process of the spiritual journey. But yeah, I think it has taken a lot to kind of go, okay, there's this other side of me also that wants to kind of be shared and expressed. And I guess hiding in that spiritual closet is what we kind of often say is a big thing because, you know, we don't often, or in my family anyway, and those around me, it's not something that we really speak to because there is spiritual and then there's also religious, and there's a fine line or a big, I guess, you know, bridge between the two at times as well. But it's all the same because we're connecting to something greater and bigger than us. And then at the end of the day, that's what it is. And how we all do it is personal.
And it's that connection of, I would say, compassion. If you want to say religion or spirituality, it's the humanity of the willingness to be there and be present for another person. I know we've spoken before about you at your other work at being a pharmacist, that you have to be, or you feel naturally to be present with people, to listen to what they need. And as you said, to be courageous, to sometimes share things or just be there listening, that people being able to receive your time in that moment. It's more than just a transaction between a pharmacist and a customer. There's something else going on because of your heart field. So it's that compassion for the uniqueness of all people and giving everybody the part of their journey that they do have importance. It's not about just, as you said, get out of the way of the ego. Maybe if you're a beginner is on the path, they're getting all these downloads or information, they just want to share it all the time. I would say the biggest thing is the discernment of when to share and when not. And I'm sure you've had, as I have had, experiences where you find yourself just sort of saying something and it wasn't what you planned, or you didn't even think you were going to do that. And you can see there's a reaction that the person needed it in some way. It doesn't matter why, but you just have to be willing to be that channel of grace, I suppose, which does take, yeah, it takes a little bit of practice, but it also takes just the willingness to step aside when you feel it and just move with the energy.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's part of it. Exactly like you said, the discernment, and then the trust and the flashes of insight that you receive or when I receive it, that, you know, something's just come in and it's not like it's been a vision or I hear something specifically, it's just something that wants to just kind of, I guess, almost escape out of the mouth or the throat. And you're like, well, where did
Yeah.
that come from, you know? And so when that happens, it's like, oh, not second guessing and not doubting, but actually just sharing and say, hey, there's what is, however it is, especially like you said, in terms of my work, it's the space holding, and no matter where it is, whether or not it's in the professional setting, whether or not it's at home, you know, with the kids, and my husband, you know, sometimes that there is the bigger, harder, more challenging, let's put it that way, because it's a trigger, right? It's a real mirror, in those sort of circumstances. But yeah, outside impression groups, you know, when we're sitting here together speaking, it is all space holding for each other so that we can hopefully be able to feel comfortable enough to share our authentic self. And that's what I love about our space, Laura, because it's always been that. There's just never been any pretense, you know, and amongst the group of community that we formed through Alana's work, that no one feels like they have to hide or anything like that. They just pure, like, show up purely in their joy and in their essence and their light.
Yeah.
And we learn so much from each other.
It's about that showing up. And I think this might tie in with a theme that you and I often discuss, and we did say maybe we would, ancestral healing. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about when you're in the spiritual world now today, you know, you most likely will have had other past lives of working in some way or believing in that. And if you think of the history of what it was like for healers, it was often quite nasty, like awful things happened because saying or being known for that sort of energy might have been dangerous. So there's often people today who are switching into that energy, who part of them also they're in the push pull of, no, I should hide, I shouldn't speak up because of old like soul aspects, you know. So the feeling of, I've said to you before about, you think about humanity, like how much people have had to, even for any reason, not spirituality, but have been unsafe in their world for some way, had to protect themselves. So do you want to talk a little bit, we don't have to get too deep into your history, but about ancestral healing and this sort of thing of should I speak or not, like what that energy means for you and how you have been turning a lens repeatedly on it and kind of bringing it up and healing it for the people who couldn't before you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mentioned this to you sometime last year, where I had that recognition or realization within my family, or within myself rather, of feeling unsafe, feeling the need to escape all the time because, you know, we've immigrants, my family's immigrants. I'm an immigrant. So, you know, and the stories where we've been told about going into hiding constantly, you know, for one reason or another, be it because of the war, because communism coming in, so the constant escape, from one place to another, and then having to hide. And as part of that would be, you know, shutting down your voice because you might have to be quiet, right? And I guess being quiet then just translates into genetically into to just everyday expression. Because I think we've heard that many times in terms of even those who World War II and the Holocaust, and how the generation trauma just kind of sits, and is held within our DNA. And so with me, it's been, yeah, learning to kind of express myself in the sense of, being open to who I am, all sides of me, you
Yes.
know. And I think that's what it is. And yes, potentially it's got nothing to do with what my ancestors did or experienced in terms of what it was that they did, and what has led to this point. But through that, part of that is being able to say, okay, let's just being able to show up, you know, and like I said, in terms of past lives and what we've done and what we've held, and in terms of all of that, I'm sure it's all there in terms of having had to hide in terms of what we've got to share, um el- and everything like that. So yeah, so it's been a journey, and I think it's partly kind of guide, not just myself, but I can see it in my sisters and my siblings. Everyone's on their own path. Everyone's kind of breaking free from the the mold, I guess, and being able to go, okay, well, you know what? I'm here to do this. I'm here to share this. And that means that potentially I am going to upset some people in that process. But we want to do it, or I want to do it with honor, because that's my lineage. But I want to be able to do it. So then that way we're free from those burdens from my kids, right? Because my kids don't then have to do that. Because I'm doing that, it just automatically, energetically passes on through that process. But yeah, I think for me, it's that not having to hide, sharing. It's still hard because I don't, sometimes I don't often completely share because there's still restrictions and constraints in terms of how things are done, because I want to be able to do my work. let's put it that way, because it's important, and I have to do that because I know it's all part of that process. But we're slowly working it out and finding the flexibility in the structures, being fluid.
But that's the wisdom, Trin. That's what I really like to talk to people about. It's not about, and even for me, where my work is always in the spiritual realm, always talking about these concepts with clients or whatever I'm writing. But when I go out into my day, there's lots of people around me who wouldn't know or barely know, because I don't need to do that to them. But I just want my presence to be, I want to feel free. Yeah, you're right. There's a difference between having to say it all the time and just being your essence of knowing that it's safe and it's okay for you to express. So I think that's an important distinction, that we don't need to be going out and necessarily putting our beliefs out there on people, but it is also feeling safe that in those moments when you have the inner urge to speak, that you just trust the reason of why that happened. And I really think it's interesting too, there's a couple of things you said I want to hold on and go back to. One, I will say the energy. You said energetically, the work that you're doing for the family line and for you see it rippling, you see your siblings doing it in different ways. You want to do it to bring freedom to your children. And I would say to anyone here today, and certainly in an age group, if you have children or you're in that bracket, you definitely are here to, if you're here to be like a pattern breaker, to help clear what was old, what couldn't be cleared by those who came before you, because there's been many individualistic people over all the decades within our, for you talk about World War II, there's always someone who's different outside the box, but often society would really stop them in ways that we have more freedom. So being able to vocalize something for yourself personally now, those kind of things, I see them as like energy pockets, like you doing it in the moment. It can go back and clear something for someone who simply could not do that. So that's part of your role. And the other is, yes, to clear it now, to free it for other generations coming in, because if Earth's not going to be holding those heavy karmic energies, she's in that ascension frequency, that 5-dimensional consciousness, then the souls who are here now, the young souls and the ones who will be coming in, will be on a very different path to what we've had to do. And there's something beautiful about clearing the way and doing it through our energy, and being aware that whatever you're doing, you're reading something, it might not seem huge to you, but you are energetically clearing the way for those who went before you and those who will come after you. It's a very important thing, and we should never sort of underestimate what each of us can bring our capabilities to bear upon this kind of ancestral healing.
Absolutely. And I think it's just bearing in mind that, when we're doing it, it's like, for me, when I'm doing it, it's just for me, for myself. Honestly, it's everything that I do. And that's part of my own soul's growth, is that it's about, for me, self-development, self-growth, self-learning. And yes, everyone can say that's just normal, like you said, that we're all here for our own individuation. But for me, it seems to be a really strong theme that's been carried through in terms of that, because I've always, for as long as I can remember, been so interested in all of this, and I don't read it. I won't say that I can then read your chart, just say in terms of astrology, or just say even I'm into human design, gene keys, all of those modalities. But I don't do it because I want to read someone else's chart. It's nice to know, but it honestly is all about my own. And that might seem egotistic for some people, I guess. It's like, oh, why is it all about yourself? But I think, like I said, the more I know about myself, the more I'm then able to hold space. And as you said before, about compassion, because if I have compassion for myself, because it always starts with us first, then I can be more compassionate towards others, because then I can put myself in their own situation, their shoes, or whatever it might be, right? Because I go, oh, okay, I can see where that might be coming from. And then it comes back and reflects back to myself. I go, okay, I think I might have to kind of like be a bit more self-compassionate when that happens, because they're like, oh, well, if I can kind of extend that empathy to them, then why can't I extend that to myself? And I think that's been the biggest part, because for me, because it's part of that process of mirroring and reflection and relationships. And so it's always so interesting and fascinating for me. It's after all of that.
And you're right. And I was speaking to Rena about this, which we were talking about selfish spirituality. What does that mean? And I said, there's no such thing, essentially, because in a way, what you're saying, it is about doing it for yourself. And I always feel, and guidance has said to me over the years, if it's for your highest good, Laura, it's for the highest good of those who are connected to the situation. And they can choose whether to take it or not, but it's always an opportunity. So it isn't, it's that terrible sort of human word of all selfish. The world sort of trains you to not think of yourself, put yourself last. But we, of course, now we're knowing that's completely the wrong way to be about. It's not that self-focus of self-importance. It's self-investigation. You just mentioned before all the many ways that we're made up, the complexity of a human soul, and even the complexity of the body, and we're all unique. And we've come with all these pockets and energies and lessons. We need to release stuff that we were doing in the past, or aspects of self that need healing now and need to be all sort of scooped up into one present moment. And there's so many reasons that we have those connections and relationships. And so you're right, the more that we learn to know about ourselves, it always comes back to compassion for me, and then compassion for others, because I can see where they're coming from. The more that you understand about yourself, the more you can see all those bits where you say, oh, I can see that pattern I'm doing, and you can again just excavate things. So it's not with a harshness, but it's like, we're here, we have this one aspect, this one body, because this body will be gone sometime in this life and it won't ever return. So that's the truth. And then the soul can go on. But while you're here, and it's not about checking off milestones or achieving things, it is about, how do I make this life be important between me and whatever you want to call it, source, spirit, God, honoring the path of just being here. It's just enough that you're here and that you're willing to, I would say, think outside of those five senses, really. So anyone who's even just starting to do that, that's a beautiful gift for yourself. And it will start to move out into relationships, as you said before, like kicking down doors and being that kind of pattern breaker. But we do have to shake things up, and we can't stay silent in the face of someone else's ignorance or whatever it might be. You need to be able to express a compassionate truth if it's right, or on the other hand, just know that whatever resonance is important for your soul, you'll be attracting. So kind of give yourself compassion and go, there's a reason for what's happening for me now, and I'm going to be open to receiving the awareness of what that is. I'm not going to judge it or label it. I'm going to trust my own process.
That's the biggest thing, isn't it? About trusting your own process, because I think many times we're like, especially questioning, and then the whole thing about having, I guess, the patience to kind of go, okay, one step at a time. You don't have to be from A to Z straight away. It's literally going, okay, A to B to C. And for some people, quantum leap's fantastic. They can do one thing and whoosh, they're at step Z. But I guess in terms of that process, it is that it's going, okay, one step and front of the other, because my word for this year is simplicity, and that's actually helping me to kind of focus that in terms of what I'm doing, so that if I do complicate things so much in my mind, because analysis paralysis, right, is a huge thing. Because I'm working with the logical brain, but to just kind of step back a little bit and take a few deep breaths and go, okay, what can I do right now that's going to help me kind of move through this, right? Move through this process. And look, life is not exactly challenging in comparison to other people, but in saying that, like you said, it's like, because of our own soul's evolution, the patterns that we experience, or I experience, just kept running, coming round and round and round. And like we've said many times, it's round, but it's not a circle round, it's a spiral round. It's sporadic. We come to the same point, but we know we've grown. And
Absolutely.
so it's remembering that and reflecting on that. I go, okay, it's not so bad, but what is the next step moving forward from that? So I
And
think
often we discuss this, and we'll draw cards for each other when we're just chatting online. And I often here comes one princess. Oh, why am I surprised? It's about patience and divine timing. And we say,
yeah,
here it comes
absolutely.
again. But it's so true. And you're right. We know there can be different souls where they have a different experience. But for a lot of people, and myself included, and you've just said, it is a lot about like A to B, just taking the process steps and trusting that there's something about building the energy, that there's a reason. It's not that you're plodding or slow, you haven't got there yet. It's almost like you're sort of seeding, like tilling the soil. If you sort of saw yourself like a little point of light moving through those steps, that it might feel like you're going back, but it's creating very strong foundations, for you. And I agree with you. We always talk about this, that spiral path. It's so hard for the thinking mind because it looks at it and it says, I cannot believe I'm here again. But then dropping into the heart, you get a feeling of spirit, essence that is saying, but you've gone deeper. And you can kind of feel it when you drop out of the resistance of, just not wanting to see that happen again. You realize, yeah, I have taken a step back. And that's why we've got that complicated design. You can have someone who's the same star sign as you, but they're going to have a bunch of other things in their makeup that's going to make them different. And so it really is about refining that for yourself and knowing. I always just try to say to myself, there's a reason. I do truly believe, like you talked about messages of hope, there is a reason for all of the things that we attract or don't have happen in our lives. And the more we can be in a level of acceptance and not resignation for that, we will find some freedom, and not in the teaching of, and then as soon as you accept, the door opens and the next answer comes in. No, it can still be a period of you're still in the same position, but you've made a switch internally where you've got more acceptance and you can say, commit to the path a bit more and say, well, gee, well done me for being in this sort of heavy energy of, well, not heavy, but it seems like it's just very
Yeah,
slow.
it does. It does. And it feels, I guess, sometimes a bit stagnant, I guess, or stuck even, that you're just trudging through it all. But you are right. And I think a lot of it is just remembering to celebrate our small wins, right? And having gratitude for that. Because sometimes I do, not sometimes, many times I forget. I am not one for great habits. In terms of sticking to routines and everything like that, I find that I will do something really, really good and really, really well for a week. And then I said to just fall off, like it's like the wheels just come off the wagon. And it's like, what? But when that happens, I've got something else in my toolbox that my body says, okay, this is what we're doing today instead. So I will go through a process where I'm drawing an oracle card, every day, just so that I'm learning for self-reflection or whatever it might be. And then it's like, okay, we don't want to do that anymore. And then today, and then the next few days I'll journal. So like every year, at the start of every year, I'm like, oh, fantastic. New journal, new year, lots every day. I have this great, I guess, inspiration.
Aspirational
Oh,
inspiration.
aspiration rather than inspiration. That's true. And then, I'm brilliant. And then 5 days in, I'm like, oh, I don't feel like that anymore. And I think part of that process, or part of this process, has been not judging myself. Okay, this is how I am. Let's just honor my rhythms. Let's just honor my cycles. Because guess what? I come back to them. It's not like I let them go completely. It's not what my body or my soul or my mind wants in that particular moment anymore. And so I just kind of move through it without kind of, I guess, shaming myself so much anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's been part of it. And it's part of that, I guess, duality, polarity, dichotomy, whatever it is that we see within ourselves. Because and then learning to integrate and embrace, as you said, it's that self-investigation, so that we do come to a point where, I guess it's like archaeology, right? You go, you dig, 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 and you find a piece here, like this bone here, that bone there, and then slowly, slowly the whole picture comes along because all the archaeologists have managed to uncover, and yet there's always still that missing bone,
Yeah.
they're still digging further for, I guess. And I feel sometimes that's my process, that
Mm.
I'm constantly digging for
It's
something.
important to know your own process, especially today where it's so easy to access other people's spirituality online, because it wasn't always. You had to have a book maybe, or you could go to a talk or something. And now it's very easy to hear and see what people are doing. And I love you talking about that and really personalizing, your own journey and whether you journal or not, because something that can creep into with spirituality with the human mind is the rigidity. So there's a different thing between devotion and showing up for something every day, which is living the path, because to me every day I'll be connecting to spirit in some way. It's just all throughout the day. But I'm the same as you. I can't be rigid. And yet I know there's some people who it's perfect. They do the one thing all the time and that builds a field of grace. And years ago I used to question, I think, well, I've stopped that now. And when I'm not doing the practice or whatever it is, it's just usually quite out of my mind and I'm doing something else. And it can seem a bit like you want to judge yourself and think, as you say, oh, shouldn't I be building on this? But I think it's part of the fluid nature of the soul. And some of us, again, all our souls are different, where when we're in a body or a material where we're doing some of the same things over and over, the soul has a need to have this on one day, different nutrients, and the journaling might be a thought that you don't write down another day. And there's so much sort of movement within that for all of us, and the personalize how you would give yourself self-care. I think so long as you know you're doing something that internally spiritually nourishes yourself throughout your life, it doesn't matter if you do it all of the time. And there's something about that, sort of the joy of that, and then on the other side not judging that it's not always looking the same. What do I need right now in this moment? And there's a learning capacity of what is it that your soul and body want from you, and not what you think you should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a lot of that. And I think it's also, we're building on, I guess, connection to self, and therefore learning how to fill our cups, as you said, in terms of the self-care. So what is it that's going to, I guess, fill my cup right now? I want tea. Do I want coffee? Do I want soda? Do I want plain water? And I think that's part of the whole process. And I think in that, for me personally, I think it then allows creativity, and circling back to where we started in terms of I guess what I call my inner whisperings, and the poetry that comes through, allows that to come to flow, right? Because then it gives me the opportunity to kind of go, okay, yes, this is right now, this is my situation, and this is where I'm at. And then those words do flow through. Sometimes, yeah, the connection is 3 breaths for me. Sometimes it's sitting there and go, okay, guides, source, beings of unconditional love, God, Mary, what would you like me to know? And sometimes it's this, like, actually probably more so these days, is it's just getting the notes app out of from my phone and literally typing down what I receive, and it flows. And then I read it back, I'm like, whoa, that certainly wasn't me.
And you've also told me sometimes when you get guidance to sort of channel a poem, a transmission for another person, sometimes it sits there and there's a piece. You talked about the missing piece of archaeology, and then much later you said it will drop into your consciousness, and you feel the energy. Oh, that's ready to be connected to
Exactly, that
the
was
next
what
bit.
happened with you.
Right, right.
It was just like, it was there and there was verses, but I just knew there was just one line or 2 lines that kind of like needed to just kind of like drop in. And when it drops in, that's it. It goes shared with the person who was meant for, because I don't personally go, let me write a poem about Laura or share something about Laura. It's literally, a lot of times it's been, I'm brushing my teeth and then the word Laura comes into my mind, and I'm like, okay. And then off I go, and I finish off brushing my teeth and then getting my phone. So then that
Notes
I can
app.
write down what's there, write down what it is that's flowed through.
And you said once too, you don't refine. It's not like when somebody would be writing a novel or crafting it. You do channel it and allow those words to be there because it's you've prepared your own physical and spiritual channel for those words to come through you. And honestly, even just your other poems of general themes always get me. But when Trin wrote, something for me about my essence, it's such a beautiful gift to receive spiritual energy through someone who is their own channel. That makes sense. So you can draw cards for yourself and you can get guidance for other people, but sometimes something someone gives you specifically for you that comes through them is the biggest gift, really. And for you to be able to trust your own process and know, okay, I'm not going to refine that and find a better sort of rhyming word. It's just being in the moment and trusting your unique gift to be expressed. And that is a huge gift to others. You talked about people around you. That's a huge gift to be as much of yourself as you can be at all times, whatever that is, whatever's showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like coming back to the self-trust and being able to share it with that person because it is very personal.
Mm.
Because when I read it, a lot of the times I'm like, oh well, it's sort of like saying the same sort of words as the one that I did before that, as the one, but they've all and frequency, vibration, however that, those words have kind of come together. Like, sometimes we put it before or after, be it in a form of adjective or whatever it might be. But then when I do give it to that person and share it with them, honestly, have to, no one has said to me, that's just terrible. Where did that come from? That's not even me. Like, no, like there has, I mean, okay, I haven't done, I over the years, I've probably a couple of handfuls have just kind of flowed through and very spontaneously. But everyone has, everyone's like, oh, it brings a tear to my eye. Because I
Mm.
guess, like you said, the resonance to that person is there.
Mm.
Um, and it's special. It's special, like to be able to offer that,
Yeah.
you know. It's
Do you
certainly
feel
not
it?
something I can do on a whim. I could
No.
probably could, but
Do you feel that it's sort of an energy transmission? Can you feel the rightness and the beauty of when it goes to the person? Do you feel like almost a cosmic tick of, like that energy signature has just been sort of closed off, like the energy is finished, so
yes,
you've been
yeah.
percolating? Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with those, those, I guess we'll call it personalized transmission.
Mm.
Um, or yeah, let's call it transmission because sometimes I feel like even though it's a poem, but most of what I write is rhymes and everything like that. It's not to create um some big story or anything like that. That's not my form of poetry. Um, it's just, I guess for me, it's just the distillation of the energy and the words down because the words are always simple. There's never big words. Like sometimes I think to myself, why can't I have like nicer, bigger, more elaborate words in there? But it's never that, and
Mm.
exactly that. So when it kind of completes, it's almost like the energy signature of that, I guess, pocket
Mm.
of words,
Mm.
light, transmission, just kind of
So
completes.
it's almost an affirmation, I feel. It's an affirmation of the person. So it's got some of that flow. We talked about this, like sort of, you say they're repetitive words, but it's like it's the way your soul reads the energy and then the way you connect with others. And I think it's so important we do this for ourselves to understand how we are as a spiritual being, not what someone else's channeling looks like or someone else's psychic vision, because they're words again. And you might think psychic means seeing everything like a movie screen in front of you, but psychic can also mean people, just the things you notice, the colors and the things in nature. And so the more that you can refine your own spiritual gifts, your own essence, you'll start to learn that language of what your soul is trying to do. Instead of you say, oh no, I won't give that poem to someone, the more that you trust in it and make that confirmation, I always call it talking to the universe. So you give someone the poem or you share it, then you're letting the universe know that you're ready to unlock more of your soul and that you trust in this mysterious other sense. And then that can bring more things online for you. And it's also joyful. I feel very joyful when I get to just be me or express as I feel guided to and not come in with all the other heavy thinking and judgments, just to be in that moment. But again, it takes a level of maturity, and not age maturity, but discernment and maturity, to not just blurt out everything, but to have a willingness to be open and vulnerable and truthful at all times. The frequency of what is real truth. So that's a whole nother discussion.
That's another, yeah, that's another rabbit hole. But in saying that, right now we're talking about personal truths, right? So
True.
so it is our own truth. So whatever feels right for us or for me internally, for my heart, and that truth leads to, I guess, the integrity, and being able to live to my own values, and knowing that this is right and this is correct for me. And we all know, I guess, when we're reading our own body cues, be it gut, messages, heart, tingles in the body, spine, arms, that lets us know that what we're saying is aligned with our own soul's essence. And I think or just even making decisions, right, whether or not that is correct for us in that very moment. And I think it's a lot of it has been part of that learning, and exactly like you said, knowing exactly what my own gifts are, and going, okay, yes, I'm not psychic, exactly like you said, always seeing that psychic is seeing the vision, being able to see, and I'm not very oh my gosh, clairvoyant is the word I'm thinking of, in that sense. Nor am I, it's just always a knowing, and trusting that knowing means then okay, well, what comes through in terms of that, it honestly just comes as a flash of insight at any given point. And so being able to constantly go, okay, I'm going to tune in and see what I can sense. It doesn't quite work like that. It's, yes, I can walk into a space and sense the energy, but once again, it's still just a sense of knowing, oh, something's off here. That person doesn't feel right, all that sort of thing. And that is uncovering and discovering how our body senses the energy around us, really.
Yeah. And we come equipped. I mean, think about it, what you said about the body. We come equipped with these incredible tools. The body is this incredible barometer, this instrument that will give you so much information about what you need to know, what's happening. And then you have that soul presence. And so being able to marry to that higher wisdom, but the body is in here in the now, and it will give you those instances, and it's always particular to you. So the more that people can give themselves space to honor their body and tune in, and what is it telling me, the more that you'll be able to refine, that higher awareness. And then you just come more and more online of, as you were saying, being in a room. The main thing I always say to people is you don't want to be so sensitive that it causes you a problem, that you have trouble moving through the world. And yet being a sensitive person, you can't switch off your sensitivity. You're meant to be that way, but you need to look after yourself in ways that allow you to continue being as open as you are, and be able to move in the world. Because if you're having to shut yourself away, we need your presence, we need your otherworldly energy here, and to be used and be digested and connected with. So it's good to say, I didn't know it was wrong in that room, because sometimes people want to go down the slippery slope of what is it, and it's better to just to have I sense a disturbance in the force, Luke, just this awareness.
That's right, exactly.
But not to let it make you go, well, oh. And I used to think, sensitivity meant people like, just what we copping out. I'm not copping out, but giving up. And I used to think, I don't give up, I push through. But I realized that wasn't always honoring my sensitivity. I would sort of push myself and do it, and I could. But then I was realizing the sensitivity was the part that said, now pull back. So it's not about hiding or jumping into your hole. It's about knowing when to respond and when to not, and honor that. So if something in a meeting or something feels a bit strange, you don't need to know what, you just be aware. And it's almost like you hold presence. Oh gosh, it's such an unconscious thing, really. I think the more and more you do it, of just to be.
Absolutely. It's definitely, it's just a self-awareness. And I find for me, maybe it's because I have been a pharmacist for so long that I've actually just naturally trained myself to do that, in terms of the space holding, and then the just letting go. Because easy. It doesn't matter even in my work or anything to take things personally, especially when people are throwing negative feedback at you or saying whatever it is about you, or not. Well, it seems to them that's about you, but a lot of times it's not even about us. It's about them and their experience and everything like that. And then learning to kind of just kind of let it wash through and everything like that. And so I think for me, that sensitivity, but then also and staying open to what is happening and the person in front of me, and holding space so that I can assist them and help them or support them really more than anything else, because I find that's more my role these days, to support people through what it is that they're experiencing. And I know it sounds weird because, like, you know, in pharmacy, what are you? You're just like doing medication. Like the number of times where it's like, oh, you guys just dispense. Okay, you know, and it's like, no, let's just not go there in terms of what it is that I do. But the ability to just kind of hold the space and be present for someone when they are in a crisis. There has been plenty of times where we've had people in crisis.
Yeah.
But just to have that sensitivity, coming back to the compassion, and then the presence, right? Because just being able to have the presence means then I'm honoring their presence. And most of the time people just harmonize. But that's personally for myself. I witnessed that. You know, people like, and then harmonize, because I've taken a moment or two to go, okay, let me just center myself first. Because sometimes that's all that's required in any situation. It's not just the workplace, but anywhere. If we can just kind of center ourselves first, then that helps to kind of like dissolve some of the, I guess, the negative, heavy energy with regards to that conflict that's we're experiencing, because I can feel it coming on, because you can kind of feel it, you know, building within the body itself. But if I can do that and dissipate some of that within me, then it just kind of flows out, because like you said, to just kind of open the heart just a little bit and go, okay, everything's okay. This person's going to be okay. I'm not going to get hurt or harmed. It just kind of like allows that to kind of open. And it's good to have that sensitivity. But exactly like you said, though, to not hide. But I've never actually considered myself a sensitive person, because, you know, exactly you said in terms of that spiritual world, so many people, oh, I'm such an empath. Everywhere I go, I can feel everyone's energy and all that. And I'm like, huh, I'm sure I do that too. But no, it doesn't, I guess I don't allow it to affect me that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like being responsive rather than reactive. And I wanted to talk about, you were saying, you know, with your family, and it's the same for all of us. Like, we need to have that compassion, to have a moment of a breath, and it will come upon you more and more as you practice it. Being able to allow the person to have their space, to not take it personally to you, because it's rarely ever personal. It's them and their energy. Have a space where you can allow someone else, and then trust that, as you say, it's not about what someone else or how they would label it, but I feel that everybody really has a sensitivity, has that gut instinct, and we need to honor that and start listening to those things the body tells us, and not to explain them away, you know. Or if it wasn't debilitating, where there's some sensitive people, they have the story of how debilitating it was to go out everybody's energies. And if you find you can move through the energies, but then you come home at the end of the day and you feel a bit tired, I'd still suggest to you that means that's your instinct, that's your sensitivity. And so you need to honor it, because it's giving you, it's always giving you cues and clues as to what people need and what you need, and I guess what will make life flow. And you said earlier about how, obviously, as a pharmacist in your work, you're space holding, but you're not bringing through spiritual, you're not giving out your beautiful poems or transmissions to people. Sometimes it's about you remembering the person's partner and the medication that was bought for them the other day and asking about it, or just asking how the person is going on the particular prescription they're on, or any of the stories you've told me. Sometimes you have people who can receive a little bit more, but you're a pharmacist, and so you're at work doing that, but you're doing it because you love it. You actually love, I know there's a party that loves offering that help. And we need to have spirituality and compassion in every facet of life, not just people who come to receive spirituality from someone. We need to give people that opportunity of, just loving compassion and kindness. And I think that you probably start to attract more of that than the people who want to come and whatever be reactive about something. You get people who really feel helped by you and maybe come a few blocks closer to come to your pharmacy because of the energy that they're receiving from you there.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, right? And they said, yes, there's a fine line of being able to bring, I guess, what we call non-evidence based
Yeah, yeah.
things into the pharmacy. But I feel like that's part of it though, being able to bridge all of that.
It's care. And when
And
someone's got a
it's
health issue,
yeah,
they do
it's
feel they need reassurance. That's what it's about,
yeah, and it's holistic. It's being able to see a person in all aspects of themselves, because it's not just what it is that you see in front of you physically, but behind that they've got the emotional, the mental, all the things that's happening leading into that very moment, right? And same thing, like, to say, let's say diabetes. A lot of times it's a lifestyle issue. So what is it that we've eaten in that time process? What is it that, how is it that we've got other lifestyles? Is it inactivity? Is it exercise? And that's all part of the process. It's not just the medication. It's everything that's led to that point. And then therefore, I guess, sometimes I don't get the opportunity to talk to people about it so much because, time frames, but then it's like being able to unravel that. Okay, how can we kind of like adjust that a little bit, adjust that a little bit, and then we can adjust every single bit of it. Who knows what we can do in terms of that whole process, but never, even though I'm on this path, never do I say, you must not be taking your medication, because that's not correct either, because it's different for every single person.
Yeah. And it's just that holistic. I love you bringing that up. I remember many years ago, many years, I started in coaching and they had this metaphor for like a wheel of your life and all of the segments. And you want to try and keep those in balance because if they're not, it's going to be a wonky wheel. The journey's not going to be very smooth. And it's so true that even if it's something you love, and even we do spiritual work and I offer that professionally too, but I have to honor the parts of me that are just the Laura human personality that want to go and read a novel for a while. And we need to have that balance. You said it might be coffee one day, it might be plain water, it might be chocolate one day, it might be rock melon. We need to give ourselves that balance. We're kind of experimenting with ourselves all of the time, and we're not having, it's that thing what Buddha says, like moderation in everything, balance and moderation. And that's the key for us, I think, to live a healthy life. And again, not with judgment, but knowing that there's not a one size fits all solution for any person. And even for your own self, if something you used to do a month ago, a year ago doesn't work, look for something new. Don't cling on to old routines or, again, rigidities. Even if it's spiritual rigidities, don't cling on to something that feels stagnant and feels like it's not nourishing you. So we do need to look at that whole self. I think every human needs to look at all the parts of them and not just one way, not overextend themselves through work they love, for example. Holistic, thinking.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think we can just, like you said, translate that into all facets of our life, right? And exactly that, it's all in moderation. And we are having a human experience after all. That's what they say. We're a soul having a human experience. So it all encompasses all of that. And yeah, I'm as human as the next person, and I would never try to kind of dictate or convince people otherwise. I've found that, exactly like you said, the journey is very individualized and personalized, which means that and especially before we even came on, I said, I love structure. Like my brain loves structure and it loves being able to have something to work with, but it's also very fluid. I'm a little bit very more flexible, and sometimes I can kind of guess be a little bit different. I surprise people with what I say, with what I do, because it's all there, and exactly that. Sometimes this facets needs to be shown, other times that needs to be shown, but it's all part of me, and as part of this whole, I guess, coming back to the evolution and the growth is actually embracing every single part of that
Yes.
and not feeling like it's this or that, because I think, you know, a few years when I started all this, and you know, we bring into astrology and things like that, I was in that process of, I guess, Uranus opposition and all these massive major life transits, you know, and it was like, oh, do I want to be this or this? And there was always this conflict of wanting to put this away, but I couldn't, because, you know, we're human. We have to pay bills and we owe the bank a
Yeah.
mortgage and all sorts of things. And then, because I want to be on the spiritual path, you know, and it's not right, because if you're on the spiritual path, you have to be good and honorable and be the healer and all of this stuff. And it's like, oh, hang on a minute. No, I can be this and this, because that is me. And I need my light over this side. And then I need to drag some, you know, I guess on the spiritual side down a little bit as well. You know, sometimes we're going to bring some things up a couple notches. Some things we've got to bring some things down a couple notches, just to be a bit in equilibrium, and like you said, have some harmonization that's happening and balance that's happening. And I find that's really where I personally, for me, where I sit amongst it all. I'm find I can kind of like, I can walk both sides, mostly with some neutrality. Like I can see the full picture, and if I need to, I can put 2 steps over this side, and then I bring myself into 1 foot planted on the other side, and if I need to, I'll move into the other side and put 2 feet there. But for me, it's always, yeah, walking those 2 paths. So then that way, yeah, I feel like I'm myself, really.
Yeah,
I'm
and you said it
authentically
too,
myself, you know.
authentically, and it is about integrating all of the parts. I always encourage people, we're not saying to leave behind different human aspects or the shadow, the parts of you that you feel are not okay or that seem to be holding you back in some ways. We want to love those and integrate those and bring it. It's like that spiritual alchemy. So we've got soul is the spirit, matter of the body. We want to alchemize those two to become like one new thing, so that we don't have, you know, often you might receive spiritual energy and the body has to digest it in a certain way. But after a while, you can receive more and more in meditation or in healings. And so we're really trying to refine all those parts. And the more that we accept them, we don't say, oh, that part of me is no good, but that part is great. The more that we understand, and we have moments where you have days where something is challenging you and you don't feel, you know, maybe your usual self, but it is still a part of you. So we really have to understand there'll be that, it's like the tide, there'll always be that flow, and you're not always going to be on or on one way. And yet, when you're in the more challenging moments, it certainly doesn't detract from all of the beauty and the goodness that you do bring in the moments when you're expressing that authentic part. So I think we just have to understand, as you said before, it's polarity, it's everything. And we have to be able to move with that and flow with that and know that that authenticity of allowing the stuff in this moment, I feel like this, you know, I'm a spiritual being. People say, oh, well, as a spiritual being, you must do your yoga and you must, you know, never eat meat or whatever it is. But again, you need to understand what is right for you and what is your personal truth. And that's more important than anyone else's prescription. So I don't tend to prescribe stuff to people in terms of, you must do this because I sit with this crystal. I suggest something for their soul. Quite often I'm getting a frequency of something just for them anyway. But I would never say to someone, what I, Laura, have done on my path, followed this, followed that, you should do that too. And in 5 steps, you'll be this. I just don't find that that is helpful. It's just a suggestive thing where someone can collate information. You grab these little bits and you weave yourself kind of your own like coat of spiritual arms, as it were. You know, it's personalized always.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been the big thing, right? To weaving it in and then distilling everything. Because I love learning from everyone. I think it's just, you know, in this day and age, the ability to have access to information at our fingertips, that if I was curious about something, I'd just go and put it in there, and then, you know, whoosh, pages and pages of resources come up. But to be able to discern what is resonant for me is important. And even just the other day, I was saying to my husband, you know, if someone says to me, what's your favorite quote or whatever it is, I said, you know, the problem is my brain just doesn't remember those things because I seem to filter it out.
Yeah.
So I take the essence of the message, and then I just let go of the words. It's like the words just disappear. I just cannot, for whatever the life of me. And that could be because, you know, even when it comes to music and songs, like my brain just cannot, for some reason, remember it. Like
Yeah.
lyrics is just, you know, it almost seems foreign all the time. But I'm like, oh, but maybe it's because I've just taken on the transmission
Yeah.
of the energy behind it. I've digested it, and then I let it go.
I feel like you've eaten the orange segment and you've thrown away the rind. Like,
Exactly. And then your body goes through the process of taking
hmm,
the nutrients from the orange, the vitamin C, you know, all of those things, and then that's it.
yeah.
Then you have to eat the orange again because our body doesn't make vitamin C. Do you
And
know?
that's what you've flagged here. Like it's noticing who you are and accepting that and not trying to be somebody else. And I also want to say, imagine if everybody, because everybody here has a body and a soul. Everyone's walking around with a soul. You sometimes you might wonder about that, but there always are. Imagine if everybody was just open to that idea of like compassion and somehow understanding, you know, that we are all connected and that harming one person, harming the self harms another. And it doesn't mean everyone's going to be doing spiritual work or even meditating, but if like just an opening of all hearts that we are all connected and we all have to care about each other and the planet we live on would be a huge shift, which is happening more and more now for humanity, rather than this focus and I guess that sort of external focus of do, and all of that, if we could be more in that truth and more sort of supportive of each other and each other's journey, that would be spirituality and everyday enlightenment to me amongst all people on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's where I would say my form of spirituality is practical spirituality, is being able to take, you know, simple things, magic in the mundane, you know, enjoying the simplicity and the beauty of nature. And that's all very simple, basic spirituality, but that's what connects us to the greater world and
Mm.
and everyone else, like you said, and not just humanity, but the birds and
Mm.
the plants and the trees. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all part of that process, because we are interconnected no matter what.
Yeah.
And whether, regardless of whether or not I feel like I'm going to say, hey, I don't sense that energy and all that, you know, but I do because I know it,
Yeah.
and it's the knowing and sitting with that and knowing that should be enough. And you know, but the mind rappels with it because that's part of how
Yeah.
the mind works.
It's not going to stop really. Like it does just need to be, you know, brought back into the heart. You're right. And it's like, I know what I know. And you have to trust that inner knowing, you know, the
Yeah.
inner whisperings. It's your inner voice. And I always say to people, you know, if you're not sure that you've heard your inner voice, just ask for confirmation. You can just test yourself. One other thing I wanted to say, we're talking about your sort of scientific brain. I also feel that there's a purity in that kind of thinking. It has to be a very clear thinking to get all of these building blocks together. And sometimes scientists can also feel into the spirituality because there's a purity to spiritual energy too. So sometimes being able to think very laterally and use your mind in that way can also be an opening for that purity of energy and needing to prove it can actually help other people. If you look at different tests and articles, says Laura, who's so sciencey wiancy to
No, but
me.
I think it's, yeah.
But people can prove heart field, right? People can prove it through science and things that we know that I'm like, what do you mean? I know what I know. People can prove the science, the electricity of the brain, you know, the electricity of the heart field, when someone's meditating, what their heart is doing if you measure it. So there's something about, I don't even know what I'm saying, but purity between a mind that thinks very clearly and openly in a more what you think is practical way and a mind that is connected to spirit and is just so open to spirit and trusting that it can bring through something that the more muddy thinking mind is not going to do. It's just an essence of a direct energy. And there's something about that which I think makes it interesting of the way we can use our spiritual energy through our higher mind into the world.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. And I guess that's where scientists, you know, when they come up with all these hypotheses, they would have had to receive some sort of inspiration from somewhere, right?
It's curiosity
As
about
much as
why.
as much we don't say it, it's like, of course, like they would have been sitting there, they go, oh, light bulb moment, and like, oh, what if? And it's like, well, that's going to come through that from the unseen. Because we
Mm-hmm.
speak science and spirituality, seen, unseen,
Mm-hmm.
visions and manifested reality, I guess. It's like it's
Mm.
all part of that process. And so, but yeah, we're certainly seeing it become more mainstream, the
Yeah.
bridging. And
Yeah.
and I think as more of us, or someone like myself, I guess, who kind of like more courageously speak about it, um, then it's like, oh yes, then more and more people, I guess, would kind of like hopefully see both sides.
Mm.
It's like they said, it's two sides of the same coin. It's
Yep.
just how we're approaching it, really, more than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, as long as I mean, we're talking about staying in the middle lane here. I mean, there's
Yep.
extremes to both sides, as with everything in the world. But if we're all staying in that sort of like neutral, range, then I think the gaps and the way people view the world definitely shifts.
Mm. Mm. And it's something about being an example for others, not trying to teach them, but by being you and being authentically you, I believe it opens a permission for people around you in some way to either be challenged by that or to somehow they sort of feel that they can be more of that. So it's like any of the, we talked about, I said the selfish spirituality or anything that you're doing, genuinely work on yourself and not sort of just trying to support an addiction to, too much inner work, but genuinely looking at yourself and seeing patterns and any of that is going to help on the etheric realm to the all because it's all about remembrance and about us understanding, ourselves and each other. So if you're thinking, well, what am I doing in my day? Just be aware that if you're willing to think about yourself and maybe you pray for something or you do some meditation, all of these seemingly small things, it does build up on an energy level. And it's that spiritual tipping point we talk about of when enough people are in their hearts for whatever reason, all of that, all the problems and all of those things can shift in ways that our logical minds can't think. And so someone can be taking their medication and coming to you, and then one day it's like the body has enough of that. And we know that anything is possible in the realm of being a human soul, on the planet. It's not always possible for each person, but anything is a possibility. And so I always say to people, if you can just stay, no matter what the challenge is, and especially we said before, health challenges, whatever your challenge is, if you can just keep your heart open and just trust that there's an answer. I'd rather be in hope all of the time. Do you know what I mean? And even if it's a long journey to get there, I'd rather still keep hope alive in my heart. It makes it easier to get through the days where it's tougher than if you actually cut yourself off from that nourishment. So
Yeah,
you kind of need to be your own, support team in that way and do what
exactly.
you can to cultivate hope as you do it in so many ways. But I would say to people, do what you can to cultivate your own inner hope. And when you help another in whatever way, you're even just kind to someone in the store, that energy goes out and helping someone else will help you. If you want to talk about selfishness,
Yeah,
when you help someone else, it does help you and the circle of life goes on.
yes, 100%. And that's really what it is at the end of the day, isn't it? It's being able to connect, because connection is so important.
Mm.
And I've always like, oh, connect to lots of people, have lots of friends and all that. But it really is, as long as we can connect from one person to another, the rippling effect, like you said, moves out. And so that
Mm.
person's happy, they walk out the door, then they're happy with whomever it is that they encounter. And then that person's, it's like, I guess that pay it forward with the people buying the person behind them in the line with the coffee, because,
Yep.
oh, wow, what a generous gift. How nice. I'm grateful for that, and have gratitude and appreciation for that. And then they might not do it today because they might not have the funds, even though they were going to buy the coffee, just say for whatever reason, let's kind of like throw that scenario out there. But then the next day they're like, oh, well, you know what? I can do that. And they might not buy one. In this case, they buy two, because that's what happens.
It's the ripple effect, and it's a very real thing. And I'm sure right now at this moment, there's some scientists somewhere trying to prove it. But I'm telling you from my heart and Trin's heart, that ripple effect is important, and it's that interconnectedness of all of us and the natural world. So if you're feeling a bit low or a bit stuck, just go out and watch some insects or something, or nature crawling around, and understand the intricacy, or have a moment of meditation on your own human body and think about the blood pumping and think about everything that goes on inside this, this
Yeah.
vessel, and take the shift out of those sort of all the heavy thinking and into the beauty and the like incredible insanity of how we can actually all be here in these bodies walking around, the beauty of that and the interconnectedness of that. And yeah, I think that's what I would just say. It's just about trusting your own path and being as kind to yourself as you can so that you can show up for others and you can be kind to them too. Because, kindness really should be the religion. That'd be, I think the Dalai Lama has actually said kindness is his religion, which is quite beautiful, really.
Yes. I totally agree with everything you've just said there.
Thank you, Trinh, for being here. It's been beautiful. I love your energy, and I know that people will hear and see or feel that when they're listening. I really appreciate you sharing your truth and what works for you, because it's so empowering to hear that. And I just also love you on a personal level anyway. So thank you for being here on my show.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. And I love you too.
And you see, that's what it's about. It feels good to get together with people that you resonate with. That the last thing I would just leave you with is, as I said at the beginning, life is too short to feel obligated. You've got to be kind to people, but you need to nourish yourself with your tribe, whomever they are. Give yourself that gift of letting people see you and you can see them. And that's that vulnerability and that intimacy that connects us all. We don't always have to be perfect all of the time, but we just have to be our own authentic truth. And I know that Trin always shows up with that. So
Well, that's what we've done. We've done this completely off the cuff. We have not rehearsed anything. So please forgive us if anything sounds disresonant or dissonant.
just let it all go, but
Yeah.
sending it through the airways with love from both of us to all of
Yes.
you. And I'll be joining you again with another episode of 10,000 Hours and Counting, the spiritual podcast about living life on earth at this time and being your supportive cheerleader for that. So signing off for now, everyone. Bye.
Bye.